help them accomplish wonders.
All is ready for James Gunn's upcoming DCU project. Audiences are excited because of the fresh elements he's introducing, especially his ongoing focus on Superman's legacy, which he's been teasing on his social media accounts. But what happened to Man of Steel 2? Let's explore the details surrounding Henry Cavill's sequel, including potential Easter eggs and their implications. Let's delve into it. So let's dive into the backstory of Man of Steel 2, for those who might not be up to speed. Way back in 2016, plans for the sequel started brewing after the release of Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. You remember that one, right? It's the movie where Superman kind of bites the dust. Then in 2017, Justice League came out and brought Supes back to life, setting the stage for a second solo flick. But Henry Cavill, our Superman, was MIA for a bit until his cameo in Black Adam in 2022. It wasn't until then, with a social media announcement accompanied by a slick picture of him in the suit, that he confirmed his return to the DC Extended Universe. And that's when things started moving on in Man of Steel 2. The word on the street was that Stephen Knight, the mastermind behind Peaky Blinders, was cooking up something cool for the story. If it had gone forward, the movie would have dropped more than a decade after Soup's first solo adventure in 2013. People were buzzing about how they'd handle such a long break. Some even thought it might mean recasting familiar faces like Amy Adams as Lois Lane. Now, let's talk villains. The big news was that Brainiac, one of Superman's most iconic foes, was set to make his big screen debut. You might have seen him in shows like Smallville or Krypton, but this would have been his first time in a movie. Brainiac's a real piece of work. He's all about hoarding knowledge and shrinking cities into little bottles. So you can imagine the showdown that would have gone down between him and Supes. This whole Brainiac deal would have added some serious depth to Cavill's Superman, delving into his Kryptonian roots and his fierce protectiveness of Earth. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. Knight's pitch got the cold shoulder, and Man of Steel 2 never saw the light of day. So why did Man of Steel 2 get the axe? Well, it all boils down to one big question mark. Henry Cavill had barely finished confirming his grand return as Superman when James Gunn, the newly minted co-CEO of DC Studios, dropped a bombshell in late 2022. He spilled the beans that Superman was getting a reboot. Cavill later confirmed this with a tinge of regret, explaining that Gunn and Peter Safran had big plans to construct their universe, one that would feature a younger Superman just starting in his crime-fighting career. Gunn's takeover of the co-CEO role in November 2022 spelled doom for Man of Steel 2. With Cavill's solo outings spaced out over a decade, the writing was sort of on the wall. Even before Gunn officially stepped into his new role, rumors were swirling about Cavill's future in the franchise. And when the news broke that a fresh face would be donning the red cape in a straight-up reboot instead of a sequel, well, it was game over for Man of Steel 2. Now, what's in store for Superman's cinematic legacy? Well, it seems like Gunn's vision for the reboot, tentatively titled Superman Legacy, is aiming for a brighter, more optimistic take on the Man of Steel. It's a departure from Cavill's grittier portrayal. Here's hoping they honor Cavill's contributions while charting this new course for Superman. So even though Henry Cavill's Superman only got one solo movie in the DCEU, it looks like there were plans to bring in some more classic villains. One of those villains was Brainiac, the hyper-intelligent foe tied to Superman's Kryptonian roots. Interestingly, there were hints of Brainiac's presence hidden in the Man of Steel movie. During the epic showdown in Man of Steel's final battle, there's a sneaky little Easter egg. When the world engine powers up, there are these 3 glowing circles underneath it. Now, these aren't just random shapes, they're a nod to Brainiac's symbol. Plus, the world engine's funky arms kind of resemble Brainiac's super advanced weapons. It suggests that Brainiac might have had a hand in Krypton's whole terraforming deal, maybe even selling his tech to them or leading their conquests before their planet went kaboom. Director Zack Snyder even mentioned his interest in Brainiac being the big bad for Man of Steel 2. Considering Snyder laid the groundwork for the DCEU with Man of Steel, it seems likely that the Brainiac hints were intentional, maybe setting up for a bigger storyline down the road. But alas, Man of Steel 2 never got off the ground, and Doomsday ended up being the last big Krypton-related villain Supes faced in the DCEU. Now, with the new Superman Legacy movie on the horizon, there's a chance they might dust off some of those old Brainiac ideas and give them a fresh spin. And who knows, maybe we'll finally get to see Superman take on one of his most iconic foes in all his big screen glory. Talking about Superman facing off against Brainiac in Man of Steel 2 opens up a whole world of possibilities. In the comics, Brainiac has been portrayed as both an alien and a super smart computer. While the classic green-skinned version is the most famous, the DCEU seemed to be leaning towards the idea of Brainiac as a sinister AI. Now, remember those Brainiac symbols hidden in the World Engine and the advanced AI on the Kryptonian ships in Man of Steel? Well, those were pretty big clues. It wouldn't have been much of a stretch for Man of Steel 2 to reveal that Brainiac had snuck onto Earth as a dormant AI, biding his time until the perfect moment to strike. But here's where it gets really interesting. Remember that controversial scene in Man of Steel where Superman has to make that tough call with Zod? Well, a new twist on that scene shed some light. In Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, Lex Luthor messes with Kryptonian technology and mentions that the Kryptonian archive contains knowledge from tons of different worlds. Now, that could have been the work of many generations of Kryptonians, or maybe it was Brainiac's handiwork. In the comics, Brainiac's whole deal is collecting cities from across the universe, kind of like souvenirs in bottles. So maybe, just maybe, Brainiac had his sights set on Earth. The timing of Man of Steel 2's release would have made a big difference too. If it came out right after Man of Steel, it might have tackled some of the issues that ended up being explored in Batman vs. Superman. You know, Superman dealing with public opinion, the fallout from the Battle of Metropolis, all that jazz. But if it came out after Batman vs. Superman, we might have seen a more confident and powerful Superman, especially after his resurrection in Justice League. A question we often hear is why the DCU reboot is good news for Brainiac. See, Henry Cavill's Superman never got the chance to square off against Brainiac in the DCEU. But now, with James Gunn and Peter Safran at the helm of the DCU reboot, Brainiac might finally get his shot at the big screen. Superman Legacy marks a fresh beginning for the Man of Steel and his adversaries. Since it's building off an established Superman, there's room for villains who didn't get their due before to step into the spotlight. And let's face it, the DCU isn't likely to recycle the same old storylines from the DCEU, so baddies like Zod, Lex Luthor, and Doomsday might take a bit of a backseat, opening up opportunities for characters like Brainiac to shine as the main villain. But here's the thing, Brainiac's not limited to just Superman movies. In titles like Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, The Authority, and Lanterns, there are plenty of chances to introduce extraterrestrial threats with Brainiac at the helm or set him up for future appearances. Unlike the DCEU's hit-or-miss continuity, the DCU can revisit characters and plot lines later on, building up anticipation for even bigger showdowns. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Your suggestions for future videos are always welcome in the comments below.